What's up, man? You're welcome. Checking in. Hell yeah. What's up, guys? You guys ready for this week? Yeah, it's going good, Mod. How's you? How you doing? Test, test, test. Everybody can hear me? Yeah, man. Ready for this week too. Just gonna let a few more people join. If you guys have questions so far, don't hesitate to ask now before I get started. So I probably could go through those questions while we do the call. Are we currently in a risk off or risk on? Can't tell yet. So you could tell like already at Yeah, I'm gonna get to it too, but yeah, you could tell like already gold or pushing lower at the open, which is a good sign, right? Like right here. If you guys could look at the top left, we could already see the open of US 30 pushed up higher. So this is like giving a good sign that the markets is giving us that risk on tone where we see equities pushing higher, we're seeing safe havens like gold pushing lower. It's a good indicator to move forward with, right? But the problem is it's Asian session, and let me just get started with the weekly prep, so we could get into it a little more. But as you guys are watching, just look at that break of structure, for gold. Typically, if we continue to see this risk flow, right? This is why I love to have this chart here too, because it gives me the idea if I want to see a risk on market, I want to see AUD, NZD, and CAD pushing higher. I want to see the dollar getting weaker. Most likely the yen and the Swiss currency pushing lower. That would ideally give me a risk on tone for the markets, right? But it is early in a session, so we got into London, and typically, if we get a headline that comes out, like ideally, I would say let's wait till New York because investors are greedy. They want to get their hands dirty too. They want to get involved in the markets. So sometimes we could see the markets kind of like stall a bit, but all the way towards New York. So let's see what happens, man. Hello, sir. All right, all right. So weekly prep. So what's going to be important for this week is going to be the Jackson Hole. The problem is it's going to be at the end of the week, so it's going to be a 3-day event with Jerome Powell actually talking, right? So the markets is going to be highly anticipating for this event. Do most of y'all remember? Uh, it, yeah, I got you. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate you. So if most of you guys remember, do y'all remember any previous Jackson holes? Have y'all traded during them before? What I realized, I'm waiting for that damn real conversation. The tracks less. Yeah, because the importance of the Jackson Hole, what it is, it's giving you guys this description. It's an annual meeting that the world top central banks and economists gather in Wyoming, right? So the main focus is going to be inflation, interest rates, the economies, right? The big challenges, future of money and markets, and why, right? Because the Fed often used the Jackson Hole to signal its next move. Markets around the world watch closely. So investors, institutions, they're going to be paying attention to this Jackson Hole meeting. All right, it is very big. So like usually they give it away, and he can give us an edge for us to take advantage for the week after. Okay. So main focus of the Jackson Hole, right? We want to see his comments on tariffs, right? Is tariffs impacting inflation and why? Is the job markets really not getting any weaker, right? He's been saying the job markets is extremely strong, but it is easing, right? So we're going to see how deep he goes into that topic. And then also what is the expectations for the September's rate decision, right? So those are the three big things, because tariffs, obviously, that is a reason why he is not cutting rates, is because he's expecting tariffs to impact inflation. Or is it because it's a political thing, because him and Trump has this beef going on and he don't want to give Trump what he wants? So either or, we got to figure out what's going to be the actual focus, right? What he says that could really give us an edge. Make sense, guys? So that's why like this is going to be the main focus. Other than that, we also have a possibility of a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, right? If it's going to happen, maybe, maybe not, right? But it could lead to some opportunities this week, as the markets is definitely focusing on what's going on. So what we want to pay attention to, right? Is are we going to get any more any more questioning between Putin and Trump during that meeting? I just show you guys here, just just so you could get like a hints of how the markets is already expecting. Like you could just look, like ends no deal in Ukraine, meets like pretty much without a deal in Ukraine. So it's just showing that it was pretty much no peace deal in Ukraine as Trump, so the news headlines is already forcing that narrative, like overall, like that's what the news headlines is pretty much forcing, right? Summit ends without a deal on Ukraine, right? So tomorrow I do expect more headlines to come in place, because where is he? Rubio says Putin does not bring up potential deal. Yeah, obviously, but Monday there is supposed to be. I don't think I put it though. Yeah, I didn't put it. Yeah, right here. All right, so discussing security guarantees on Monday. So tomorrow we just expect to have more headlines with obviously the security guarantees, because Putin also said it's okay for the U.S. to extend it with Ukraine. So that does give a little bit light. Why are you going to tell them to you could go ahead and protect this country if you choose to, which is it gives a little light to the end of the tunnel, supposedly. But we need to see more headlines, what we could get, so we could take advantage of some better tradable opportunities. So this is just to give you guys an idea on what to look forward to, right? So if the talks continue to go optimistic, so if we see that there is a deal that's about to be happen, hopefully if they give us a date, I would say that will be the main focus. If they give us a date that this is the time we're going to do this deal, that could give us more of a risk-on reaction. Equities could push higher, gold could push to the downside. If you're trading pairs like GJ, that would be good for looking at the opportunity of GJ buys, right? Because the yen is going to get weaker as a safe haven. If we see a risk-off environment, if we see that there's not going to be no end to this war, then we're going to most likely see equities push a little lower. Gold may push higher from that initial headline. Do I really think the markets really would care about it? Not really. But it's just something to pay attention to. If you get that news headline that comes out, at least you could be able to have an edge moving forward. So just moving towards Fed speakers this week, right? We got Bowman on Tuesday. He's going to speak at 2 p.m. Waller is going to be on Wednesday. Bostic is going to be on Wednesday and Thursday. And obviously, Jerome Powell is going to speak on Friday at 10 a.m. So that's just going to be the main focus, because we just want to pay attention to us having an edge. 1 second, guys. All right. So if you guys are cool with understanding that point, right? What to pay attention for the Jackson Hole, why is important, and also with Russia and Ukraine, and what expectations to pay attention to with that, right? Just put a 1 if that makes sense. If you guys have questions, like, it's good to ask now. All right, before I move forward to the upcoming events, it should be pretty clear, so you guys could like have an idea on what to expect. Okay. One sec, guys. Am I still echoing? Yeah, and if you guys want a better view on Instagram, just go to Facebook. I mean YouTube, so you could get a better view. All right. So what we're gonna pay attention to upcoming events. Okay. So Tuesday, that's when the day is gonna start. So just remember on Monday, the main focus is gonna be news headlines. Okay, guys. So it's going to be focused on Russia, Ukraine is going to be on Monday. There's no economic data during that time. So opportunities for Monday is just going to be more of a technical perspective. Okay. But Tuesday, 8:30 a.m., we're going to have Canada CPI. Typically, that could give us a really good opportunity. For those that don't know what CPI is, it's Consumer Price Index. It's the government report to measure how prices on everyday goods are. It's just how the central banks focus on inflation. Okay. So this is a very important print, especially for you guys that trade the CAD currency. Typically, if we get a higher CPI print, that's going to lead to a stronger CAD currency. It's inflationary, so it will lead to the Bank of Canada to leave rates as expected. Okay, they're not going to likely cut if they continuously get a higher print of inflation. If we get a lower print of inflation, that could trigger a weaker CAD, right? Lower inflation heading towards their target goal of 2%. That could lead for, a weaker CAD currency as expectations of a cut for the next meeting. And then we have the Reserve Bank of New Zealand's rate decision. I'm pretty sure none of you guys trade the NZD currency. But if you guys do, sometimes we can get a really good opportunity trading like the RBA, the RBNZ. Most of the times we could get a really good edge. So for this one, 28 out of the 30 economists are expecting the RBNZ to cut its rate by 25 basis points, so they're expecting a cut, but usually the forward guidance is what matters the most. Okay. So that's what we're going to focus on. And yes, it's going to be at night during Asian session. And typically, depending on, I will do an update in the private group on how to trade this event. I might go live for it, just so that we could just get the hours in and just get the education part. But as an opportunity, like sometimes like these type of meetings could be a kick the can down the road just to get through it, because tariffs are still not being implemented as it's supposed to, so that they could see how inflation and how trade wars is actually impacting the economy, right? So usually that they could cut rates, but it doesn't mean that they're going to cut more aggressively. So forward guidance is what's going to matter the most. What I'm excited for is Wednesday, 2 a.m. We're going to have the UK CPI data. So for you guys that like to trade the pound pairs, that's going to be a really good opportunity. And this one could go either way, right? Remember the last rate decision? They're already having expectations of higher inflation. This is why the last Bank of England rate decision didn't come out higher than expected. It was really because a majority of the members before they was all voting for a cut. Now, majority of not like pretty much four of them did actually vote for rates to be the same, because they're expecting inflation to actually rise in the United Kingdom. So with a higher CPI print, that would be the best edge, right? Because that's going to continue the expectations of the last Bank of England's rate decision. So we could get a stronger pound out of that. But last week, data didn't really give us much, but if we do get a miss, that could be the start to see that transition to start looking for sells on pound pairs. So CPI definitely going to be a big focus. Then also on that Wednesday at 2 p.m., we have FOMC meeting minutes. So you can see that right here. They hold 8 times a year for U.S. monetary policy. So we got Fed meeting minutes and the Jackson Hole this week, so crazy. But typically they usually give us headlines that we already know from the last rate decision. So I don't expect anything different. Well, we did have a little bit of data that did change. So it's a possibility they could give us an edge during this FOMC meeting minutes just because, right? Markets is already pricing in a cut. So if the FOMC meeting minutes give us that language, right, that we could anticipate a cut, we could see weaker dollar and stronger equities, right? And then the opposite, if they don't really confirm to us that September is most likely going to be a cut, we could possibly see stronger dollar and weaker equity markets, all right? So it is important. It's at 2 p.m. It's not a live event, guys. It's just going to be a bunch of news headlines from that event. So also Thursday, London session from 3 pretty much till about 4:30 a.m. We're going to have Euro and the UK PMI data. So when you guys are looking at PMI data, if it's above 50, it's expansionary. So it's good. If it's below 50, it's contractionary, so it's bad. So that's how you judge PMI data, okay? So if we get anything below 50, right, that shows that the economy is struggling with growth. Like if we see anything above a 50, right, that shows expansion. That's good for growth. So that's how you track PMI. And then Thursday, again, we got the Jackson Hole, and then it's a 3-day event. So it's going to be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And that Friday at 10 a.m., we're going to see Jerome Powell speak. Okay, so that's pretty much the rundown of important economic data for the week. All right, guys. So that's what we're going to focus on. Usually that's going to give an edge. Anybody took the gold scalp down, break his support? Like usually I would say wait until like 9 p.m., right? But again, I don't. Yeah, like I'm going to be patient personally, because we still don't have anything, when it comes to news headlines, right? But between Russia and Ukraine, we really don't have anything. So I would hope that tomorrow does give us more clarity on what to expect, but it's a possibility that we probably won't get as much, right? They like to drag it out. It's just political. My opinion is just really political. But just like an example, right? Because if you guys like to trade gold, and if we want some sells on gold, what would make sense, right, is if we do see some sort of agreement of a ceasefire, because this is why we have this range, because it shows indecision. And we do have the break of support here, which I'm pretty sure there's probably a few of y'all that's already in sells. I'm pretty sure they're in the chat, in the group chat, they're already in sells. But if we could stay below this area of 33, 32. And I know your price points is probably different, but the market structure should be the same, right? We want to see this area hold and push lower. Ideally, what would help and give you more confidence for more sells on gold is if we see de-escalations, right, of the Russia-Ukraine tensions. If we see more positive headlines regarding tariffs, right? If we see obviously a stronger dollar as well. If we get a stronger dollar today, right now, this is a good technical setup for that downside reaction. If you guys are in sell, I would say that's a good job. What I would look out for is if you see that prices come back into the middle of the range, right? Because you just don't want to get stuck in a sideways consolidation. Safer buys is just going to be above 33.52, right? As we could hit this next target of 33.62. And if I'm looking for buys on gold, typically I either want to see drastic weakness in a dollar, but also if we get tensions escalating between the Ukraine and Russia situation, right? If the U.S. shows involvement, I want to take buys on gold if I see escalations or market fear. That would just give you more confidence, okay? So that's what you look forward to. But I understand that probably some of you, it is looking for the downside in gold moving forward. This is a weekly prep. So like even when it comes down to equities, right? NASDAQ, US 30 price action is a bit different. It is. I would personally just wait until New York session before I probably look for ideas on NASDAQ. So guys, we go live for that during New York, and I would look for some trade ideas. I don't expect it to do as much. Maybe during London, we could possibly see us. Let me just do it better. Maybe like I could see like price could just push a little in the zone, and maybe we could see price chug up a bit during London session. But if the more that we can range, the better, because then it's showing us that the markets is really waiting for a reason before we actually get a breakout. So it's best to just wait for that reason and learn to just have patience. Okay, just be patient. Just wait until we get an edge. And we'll talk about more about that over New York session. So the sells on gold, it really does make sense overall. But when I'm focusing on the dollar, right? Because we already got the markets, like especially like the reasons why we got this downside in the dollar is because the markets is pricing in a cut for next month's rate decision. So that's what makes sense for dollar weakness. And do I agree with it? Not really, because I don't see economic data actually supporting it at the moment. So I want to see like if CPI was taking a huge drop. Labor data, like we did get bad NFP data, but last week's inflation wasn't it wasn't enough to say like, okay, no brainer sells. It wasn't like that. I feel like the markets is trying to force a rate cut, and it's a possibility if they keep doing that. I personally think the Feds is not going to cut rates anyway. So the next rate decision, to me, I feel like it's probably going to give us the best opportunity no matter what it does. But from that print, it's probably going to be a huge edge, because if the market's priced in a 90-something, like a 95% chance of a cut, and then the Feds just still don't cut rates, I think Powell is just going to use that. I think Trump is going to go and use that against Jerome Powell to try to get the public to hate him for it, right? Just they could easily blame him for trying to ruin the U.S. economy. But this is a good example, the CME report. So September 17th is the next rate decision, right? We at 94%. If you guys don't remember, this was at like 97% chance of a cut, so easing. So we did see that number drop, right? We are seeing that number drop. We're seeing the chances of a no change actually increase. I personally think I would say that we're probably going to end out right here at like 50-50. I think that's where we should probably end out, probably towards next month. I think it's going to be a 50-50 shot for a cut. And economic data is what's really going to help us determine if the central banks in September is going to cut or not. Okay. Because like I said, the inflation didn't really give us an edge. So we got more data to come in before then. And that's why economic data moving forward is going to be extremely important. All right. Because it's going to impact these probabilities. And that's what's going to happen with the dollar. But I would like to see some dollar upside. I still personally would want to see some dollar buys. I would like to see dollar come at least to like 99 flat, and then we could possibly start looking for some downside if we get economic data showing like slowed growth, weaker economy. Okay, that because if the Feds don't want to have a recession. So that's something that I will pay attention to. Like this happened, I think this was Sunday. Yeah, this was Sunday. But this was I think this was just a feed. But I would like to see some upside first. Again, let us drive higher on the dollar and then look for some intraday sells. Okay, guys. Now I just ask you guys questions if y'all have any. Yeah, exactly. Tulu, it might cause escalations, cause safe havens to push higher. What might Daniel? I probably answered that for you already. All right, guys. So appreciate.